All right, welcome everybody to our Bylaws Committee special meeting to talk about bylaws. I call the meeting to order at 9:33 after a couple of technical difficulties on my part. So can everybody please introduce themselves and declare their conflict of interest? I'm Nancy Vandell, Chair, and I know of no conflicts.
Wyatt Angelo, no conflicts.
Michael,
Susan
go ahead, Susan.
Susan Schomburg, no conflicts.
And Michael Beachley, no conflicts.
Bill's still connecting to audio. Tom, you're muted.
Tom Syke, no conflicts. It would be nice if Zoom was consistent on where the mute unmute was. I think that someone should actually design the interface. That would be good.
Yes, wouldn't that be good?
Yeah.
While Bill Miller is connecting to audio, I'll welcome Bill Bush. Nice to see you today, Bill. And okay, so I've made a few changes to the agenda and added things to the portfolio. So let me share the screen with the agenda. Actually, I need to not just share right now because I don't seem to have the right thing open.
Sorry, I had a lot of trouble getting in.
Yeah, welcome, Bill.
Don't know why, but
Okay, I'm not going to share us.
Bill, you need to declare that you have any conflicts or not.
I have no conflicts. My name is Bill Miller. I think there was a new thing where you had to click I am not a robot or something. I don't
Is that
remember.
right? Did you have that as you were going in?
Well, I don't remember seeing it before, but I finally noticed it the fourth time I tried to get in, and that seemed to have done the trick.
Okay, so I'm going to bring up our revised agenda. So welcome, Bill. And did you say you have no conflicts? I think you did.
Yes.
I did say that.
Thank you. A little frazzled this morning. I came in somehow with the wrong meeting link. Nobody could get in. All right, so our agenda is up there. Sarah's going to join us this morning and give us a status update that I think people will be very happy with. She called this morning with some updates and she'll share that with the committee. She will not have her camera on. She's going to be sitting somewhere that doesn't have a camera, but she will be talking and she can see us. So on the minutes approval, I want to thank Michael for working on the minutes. And at this point, I think I'm going to just defer them all to the next meeting. So we'll have 3 sets of minutes at the meeting next Friday, so we can move on today. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, but before I forget, I do have 2 changes, so I guess I can send them to Michael.
Please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you do that, that would be great. Thank you.
Susan beat you to it. Boy, Susan is on the job. Thank you, Susan.
Okay,
You're welcome.
Did people have a chance to read the minutes? Because I just posted them last night. So is there anyone who would like a chance to take a look at them before next Friday's meeting? Because if not, we can just go ahead and make those changes. Bill would like to look at them before next Friday's meeting. Okay, thank you. And I know they're a lot of work, Michael, so thank you. I'll get out last meeting's minutes to you in the next couple of days.
Okay.
Okay, and then
I apologize for the lateness of all of those. I have been overwhelmed in the last few weeks, and so I'm crawling out and back on the planet.
No, that's okay. With the video, it's we can all go back and look at videos,
Yeah.
which I've done more than once. So thank you, Michael, for your work on that. I know they've been very complicated minutes to take. So we have my report, and then Sarah is going to give her report. I'd like to talk. I moved up some of the other things. 2 of you have to leave today by 11. So I moved up talking about our upcoming feedback session and kind of the process going forward. I'd also like to talk briefly about when we'd like to talk about when we want to tackle policies and procedures. If we have the energy to do some of that at the end of this year, or if we want to wait until next year. So think about that before we get to that, and then start reviewing the draft bylaws. So we have 2 articles to review that following the feedback sessions. This will be our first meeting following those 2 feedback sessions for Article 7 and Article 10, and then review the document as a whole. And then summarize the meeting and action items and public comment. So I know there's a lot that we're going to be going through at the end of before people have to leave at 11. I want to have a vote to present what we are presenting with amendments to the feedback session. I don't think it's a critical vote because we'll make amendments likely in the feedback session. We'll have an opportunity to come back at our next meeting next Friday before we in which we'll be taking a vote to go into the general meeting. So, but just think about whether you're going to be ready to have a vote to present as amended into the feedback session. And I will invite any members of the public, and I think is Bill still here? I can't see when I share. Anyway, to at least comment through the chat as we go along if you'd like to. So our calendar is listed down here. I did flesh it out a little bit. So feedback session number 9, the entire bylaws, is on Tuesday. We'll go through a little more detail of that later. And then our meeting next Friday. And then Saturday the 13th is the general membership meeting. We are going to be given 45 minutes to present the bylaws and have a discussion at that meeting. So we'll go into that more in the chair's report. And then Tuesday, the 23rd of April, is another executive board meeting, which will be held before our actual bylaws approval meeting on May 11th. So are there any comments on the agenda or changes you'd like to make? Okay, agenda is approved. So my report, I just kind of wanted to go over, let me actually bring that up. So 3 of us out of the 6 were at the executive board meeting, and thank Tom and Michael for attending, and Michael's there as parliamentarian. And I think we made some progress. It was quite a rigorous meeting, but we were able to talk about, they wanted to know about whether we were interested in applying for the new term, and thank you all for replying on that. 5 of us out of the 6 have said that we would like to apply, and I think that's pretty amazing considering all the work we're going through right now. So thank you all. And one of us said felt that they accomplished what they wanted to this year and wish us well, and thank you for that as well. I put together a notice for them to publicize for people to have applications for the next term. And I think Jeff is modifying that to go out tomorrow possibly later today if I get him a response. But this is kind of what I had written up. If you have, it's in the meeting file if you wanted to take a look. But it's basically just talking about nominations are open. All of us need to reapply, of course. And since 5 of us will be reapplying and we have 7 spots, there'd be at least 2 more spots for new people, or it's possible other people would get more votes. But I think we should be good. So I think you can write up a brief biography, kind of like we all did to apply this time. And I hope you all will submit that. Again, our election isn't till June, so it's not like you have to do this right away. But they will be keeping a list, I think, through Jeff. And our main activity for next year, as I put in the email to each of you individually, is hopefully we will have the bylaws approved this year, and we'll be focusing on the policies and procedures document next year. So I think that will be good. And then I just explained a little bit from the bylaws what the committee does. So are there any comments on that part of it? Any changes you'd like me to make in what we
Looks
send to Jeff?
Looks good. Thank you.
Okay,
There was a bit of controversy. Well, controversy. Basically, one person was unhappy about the way that the election was held for the subcommittee. And that's probably a decision we need to make explicitly. Sorry for beating around the bush. I'll get right to it. The comment was made that a slate was presented. We had, 5 slots, 6 people, and the 5 who got the most votes got in the committee because everybody was voted on at once. An alternative method of doing that is a yes, no for everybody. That makes it a little more complicated if everybody gets a yes, and then we have too many for the slots. So then we have to do the one vote, the one who gets the most. The person was quite adamant that a yes, no on everybody should be allowed. I'm of the opinion that the people who gather the most votes should be on. The disadvantage of having the people in a case of where we have 6 people and 7 slots, everybody gets on automatically. And that person wanted the option of being able to say, no, I don't want that person on the committee, which is a valid point. And I think we need to make an explicit decision on which way we should go on that.
I think you bring up a really good point, Tom. And I thought and this is probably as good a time as any to talk about that. I thought when we got into nominations and elections and not Article 4 or
Sorry.
7, no, that's okay, that we should discuss that. But I think it is important. Jeff was the one that made that comment, and so think about that, because I think I would like to defer it to Article 7, because I think that's probably more relevant when we're talking about subcommittees than we're talking about voting. But Sarah's also going to be updating us on voting kinds of issues. So I think both of them are going to be germane. But think about, I'm glad you brought it up, Tom, because it's something for everybody to think about what you think we should be recommending on that. Because I think we were just assuming it would be like we did with all the candidates are up there, and if there are more candidates than there are spots, that it would be the ones getting the most votes. But that may not be the right way to go. So I'm going to defer it, if that's okay, till we get to Article 7. Is that okay, everybody?
It's okay to defer it, but just so we understand it.
Yes.
How would this no vote thing work? If one person voted no to have somebody not on the committee, they wouldn't be on the committee, or would
No.
If the
majority
majority
need to vote no? Or
if the majority voted no, then that person would not be on the committee.
Right.
So you could get a situation if you had 7 slots open and 5 people applied, and one of those people got a majority of people not wanting them on a committee, you'd only get 4 people on the committee. I mean, you could do that sort of thing. That's really the difference.
I
Wow.
think Jeff also, but before I go on, I want to welcome Sarah Absher, Director of Community Development for Tillamook County, has joined us. So thank you, Sarah. And I mentioned to them that you don't have a camera access, but anyway, I couldn't see that you had joined us when I was sharing, so I wanted to acknowledge you. So I think Jeff was also of the opinion that the executive board should be able to vet candidates and not actually put out candidates if they don't feel that the candidates are people that should be recommended. And that's something that I think we need to have another discussion about as well when we get to Article 5 with meetings, or Article 4 with officers. We touch on this, and Article 7 with subcommittees, because his impression had been that that was what we were setting up, and that's not my impression. My impression was that the officers have agreed that it should be up to the membership to decide that the vetting that would be done would be to acknowledge that they are indeed members. And since nominations can be made from the floor at any time, that's kind of a moot point. So it's kind of a big subject that's come up as part of the executive board meeting. So let me go ahead and reshare that report. And I'm in the wrong. What are you looking at? Are you looking at an agenda?
We're looking
Yes.
at,
Or are you looking at the report?
no, the agenda.
All right, shoot. I thought I was getting this down. Okay, I think this is it. Are you seeing the report now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So the rest of the meeting, our report was to talk about the calendar and deliverables. And so there were some concerns expressed again by Jeff about the process and what we are going to be doing going forward. And so we have, as you know, I think may as well just go through this process. We have been working very much in parallel with Sarah Absher in the county and she's been working very closely with the commissioners and the county council. So I don't have the same concerns that Jeff was expressing about being able to get county approval at different points. But I think he made a couple of good suggestions that I wanted to bounce off of you guys. So we have our meeting, of course, now, and where we're providing a draft for the feedback session. And then Tuesday, we have feedback session number 9, which we're going to go through separately here. And then we have Friday, we're going to be discussing the output of the feedback session and the bylaws as we would be presenting at the April 13th meeting. At the April 13th meeting, we're being given 45 minutes to present the bylaws highlights, and we'll talk about that, but in a separate agenda item here on how we want to do that. But then we come back and we have another bylaws meeting where we can talk about the output from the April 13th meeting and approve, hopefully, a document to go to the county for their approval. And then Sarah will be taking that to the county council and the commissioners, and then getting back to us so that by the time we have the May 11th meeting, we will be prepared. If the county has some feedback for us, we will have a chance, hopefully, to talk about that at the May 3rd bylaws meeting. And then on May 11th, we would have the parliamentary procedures training at 9:40 a.m. And Michael and I'll help if needed, but I don't think I'll be needing it. And then at 10 o'clock, the actual meeting to approve the bylaws. When we have the meeting to approve the bylaws, then we would be presenting the document as a whole. We would be then allowing article by article any motions for amendments, having those discussions, et cetera. And Michael, as parliamentarian, can help them through that amendment process, and then a vote to approve. If there's anything significant, Sarah will be at that meeting. If there's anything significant the county's not likely to approve, that can be mentioned in the meeting and that can affect the vote. But it's possible we would have something that would be approved that would have to go back to the county for approval. But I think this is a good process. Sarah, would you please weigh in to see if you see any problems with these dates?
Hi, Nancy. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi. No, I do not.
Okay.
Just initially looking at them. No. Mm-mm. And I think I
Okay.
can make all of those.
Okay. Thank you.
Um,
And of course, it does matter that we get you the output in a timely way, which we will do
Right.
following each of these meetings.
Yes, and I did visit with Commissioner Olson this morning, and he will also be attending the April 2nd meeting online.
Okay.
The general membership meeting So we did go over the schedule together as well this morning.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Nancy,
Yes,
um,
Michael?
I suggested at the executive committee meeting that they may want to, or it'd be a good idea if that group met prior to the big meeting and discuss possibilities, what ifs, et cetera, so that as that meeting proceeds, they've walked that ground a little bit before we actually get there. There are great possibilities of controversy to occur and control of the agenda and control of the procedures and so on and so forth. I suggested to them that that we all walk through that stuff together just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Right. And so I didn't have that on our report because they hadn't set an executive board meeting yet for April, but it's on our agenda that it will be on April 23rd at 7 p.m. And I think the bylaws updates are going to be a big part of that. So, but yes, and I think we're going to have to meet with Mark particularly and go through some parliamentary procedures support for him.
That's right.
He's fairly familiar with it because he's a school board member, so I think that will be helpful. But
School.
we'll spend a little more. Pardon me.
School board.
Oh yeah, they
They'll-
follow parliamentary
Oh
procedure
yeah,
for that.
those are war zones sometimes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, there'll be some additional prep. So that was my report to there were some concerns expressed, mainly by Jeff, that the timeline might be unreasonable. I said I thought we were going to be fine. I had to push back kind of hard, but I think we're good. But Michael and Tom, if you have any additional things to say about the meeting, please feel free.
Nope, I already said it.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
The only thing I took out of that of non-substance was a bit of anxiety on their part that this is a big deal coming up, and they want to make sure that it goes smoothly and fairly and equitably, and I think that's good.
Yep. Okay, thank you. So that's my main report. I think other than that, I think our last two feedback sessions have gone quite well. We got a lot of good information from Article 7, which we'll be going through, that made some changes over what we had agreed on in our last meeting 2 weeks ago. So I think most of you were there and heard it, but we'll go through that. So that's my report. As you know, we've had some interesting discussions back and forth, and Sarah has been working with County Council. So Sarah would like to give us a report this morning. And please, Sarah, I just want to thank you in advance for all the time you're spending on assisting us on this. I think people will be pleased.
Oh, thank you, Susan. Or sorry, Nancy. I'm so sorry. I was looking at Susan when you said that. Thank you, Nancy. My pleasure. And I love your Easter pin.
Oh, thank you.
So just taking to heart the feedback from the committee and the community about voting and the number of votes per property. I, as promised, have continued to engage in conversations with County Council about this. And I proposed an alternative that he is reluctantly agreeable to. But we would need to see it on paper. So would need some language. So I'm going to give you the concept of what I proposed. And then you are also good at drafting the language and you have attorneys and experts in here. So I'm going to let you guys take it and run with it if you are supportive of this as well. So in the bylaws, the language needs to explicitly state that all voting is on an honor system, that a roll call vote must be taken immediately, and that there can be up to 4 votes per property. And where I justified the 4 votes, I actually did a very high level look at a lot of the ownership arrangements for properties in the Nescoan community. And what I explained to county council was that by increasing the limit to 4, it opens the opportunity for many properties that have joint ownership either by couples that are siblings with their spouses, trusts, or others, to where there is an opportunity for those members to each have a vote. It clips it before we get to the 12 and the 25 with the LLCs, fractional ownership, etc. But it largely pulls in the trusts and the family arrangements where many of you have multiple family members that have interest in ownership of a property. So if you're agreeable to that, and if you can put that into language, I feel pretty good about getting that through county council.
Okay, Sarah, we are going to be operating under Robert's rules, and roll call vote is part and parcel of that. Do we need to be explicit, or, I mean, we can be, but
I think you do, because not everyone is an expert on Robert's Rules of Order. And it just avoids any confusion of what people may or may not, in the heat of a moment of a vote, it is explicitly in there without having to explain what Robert's Rules of Order is.
fair enough. Fair enough.
Thank
We
you.
can do that.
I think, and just a moment, Michael, I get you next. I think that I haven't had time to go back and actually look, but I kind of think that in Article 5 under voting, we have roll call in there, but if not, I think it would be easy to add. Michael?
Well, Sarah, would you restate that first point about roll call vote?
Yes, so if there is a request for a roll call vote, it needs to be taken immediately.
Oh, I see. Well,
Yeah.
is there an assumption that the roll call vote would be deferred?
Well, it's if we're voting on an honor system, and we're capping the number of votes. It's the roll call and the honor system go back to multiple conversations we've had about potentially limiting the number of voting. This is on the honor system. We're not tracking. We're tracking the vote result, but we're not tracking each individual vote by name. So it just, for the CAC and for the county, right? Because the CAC is an advisory body to the county. It insulates us all having that language explicitly clear if someone were to challenge something later.
Okay,
Yeah,
I understand.
thank
You
you.
know, the reality is that roll call votes are probably going to be very rare, only in a very contentious situation.
I agree.
And-
And I have hardly ever, I mean, in my 15 years going on more in doing this work with CACs, I have rarely seen that. But it's just, if it happens, we're ready, right? It's explicitly in there for all of us what that process is and the expectation of how it will work.
Right. The only
And
concern.
the difference is, if I understand it, if Nance or whoever the chair person is says, all in favor say aye, and you hear this big aye, all opposed no, and one person raises their hand. Someone then could say, I want a roll call vote.
They could do a
And
point of
then-
order and ask
then-
for a roll call vote, correct?
Everybody would raise their hand and you would go around and count them.
No,
No,
No, that's not
it's
how it
by
works.
name.
it's by name.
By name.
So in the area, and so we actually would probably even need to define what roll call means, or have that in the added to the definitions perhaps in Article 10. But
Can do.
if it's a Zoom meeting, then there's a way to do that. We would just capture those names but we would, I guess that would mean, Sarah, we'd have to read off the names. Is that correct? By vote?
I think so. I think you'd
Yep.
have to do that. Yeah.
So that also would get into something possibly in policies and procedures on how we define that. Would we take the votes that already happened and publish them, or would we give people an opportunity to change their vote and have a re-vote knowing that they will be public?
We have to do a revote.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think
And-
so, because I think it would intimidate some people. It would be interesting to see if there was a change, but yeah.
And then sometimes people call in two people on one identity on Zoom, like husband, wife.
Mhm.
How would you do a roll call vote if you don't?
We would have to ask them.
State their
So
name.
we
Yeah.
would have to actually say, and this is all good for policies and procedures. We're gonna have to play this again. But we would have to just say, if there is more than one on a Zoom account, please let us know your second vote or whatever. So,
My concern about roll call votes has nothing to do with the roll call vote itself. I mean, that's democratically appropriate thing to do. My concern is when in a contentious situation, some bodies begin to use that ability multiple times. Then it becomes a problem for the assembly to have to deal with it. Because obviously the intent there is to disrupt procedure, in which case, by the way, the chair may say, I will overrule that as being out of order, and that will require somebody in the assembly to say, I appeal the decision of the chair, and then they can vote on whether or not to have a roll call vote. But if that happens a number of times, it's appropriate for the chair to step in and say, hey, we're not going to do this nonsense and move forward.
well, Michael, I hear you in most cases, but I think what I'm hearing from Sarah is that the chair would not be allowed to do that. The difference is that I think a roll call vote could be done through Zoom if it's not a hybrid meeting. The roll call vote could be done by Zoom very quickly. It's not like it would be in a regular assembly where you have to actually have people stand and have their names recorded.
Yeah.
And Zoom has the capability of keeping a record by name of how people voted. So I think it wouldn't be as disruptive as you're thinking of for a regular.
I
meeting.
disagree. I think a roll call vote requires an auditory response. It is a roll call. You go down the roll and you call out each individual who's registered and ask
Well,
for their vote.
I agree with Tom. Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
That's a roll call vote. It's painful. And yes, we are advertising where the grenades are stored.
Okay. So Wyatt has
And
two
when you
questions
say
for Sarah.
call out people who are registered, you mean who have registered for that meeting?
Yes.
They've signed into the meeting.
Yeah.
Or if there are, like Susan pointed out, there could be 2 or 3 people at a computer. They should be able
Yeah.
to.
My
each of them
concern is
vote.
my concern is not about roll call votes. Let me be fair about
It's
that.
more like misusing them.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And
Yeah. Well-
that is something that we have to take into consideration.
So Wyatt, what are your questions?
Yeah, Sarah, I don't know if you got this email from me or not, but one of the questions I had that I hoped that you would address with county council was what the legal precedent he or she relies upon in determining that, number one, all restrictions have to be equal across the categories of voters. And secondly, that we can't restrict voting. And I raised the example that there have historically been approved methodologies of restricting votes for non-residents on issues, which involves, for instance, taxation. It also involves issues of special districts, et cetera, which have always met constitutional muster. And so my curiosity is somewhat piqued. The second question I had was whether, in fact, with a change like this, we need to have an additional feedback session.
Well, let me just answer that second question. The beauty of this is that we will be discussing this Tuesday night.
So yeah, thank you, Nancy. So yes, so we have a feedback session coming up. Wyatt, the short answer is this is an advisory body to the county. This is a community advisory committee that is focused on citizen involvement for primarily participation in land use matters. And so that's the answer. This is not about taxation and different voting structures. This is consistency for inclusivity and equity in each of our unincorporated communities. So it's a policy thing. It's not, there's no legal tether to this.
Okay.
Okay. But this is and I've spent a lot of time, as Nancy knows, visiting with each of the commissioners individually. This is as good as I can, this is where I can get you to. So my hope is that the committee will support this and move forward with this, because I don't think I can do any better.
That's
And I think
fair
we've
enough.
gotten a lot of movement already. So, I think we were all kind of expecting an answer to come back about no limits. So I think this is, a fair compromise. Bill?
Can you explain the honor system? Does that mean if person A knows that person B has nothing to do with Nesquin, but person B is voting, that's just too bad?
Yes, Bill,
It's-
that is the short answer. And that is what happens in every CAC, but I have never seen that be an issue.
It's kind of what we were talking about in previous meetings, that we're not set up to be able to do policing. And we don't really want to have that kind of thing. And I don't know, Wyatt had said a number of times where that was very convincing to me, because I've had kind of the same concern about the honor system. But why don't you say that your experience
I
again as
remember
a
what he says. I'm just
okay.
Sort of saying we're just going to do it on the honor system is different than writing it down on a piece of paper and
Right.
saying, here's your official invitation to be a bad person if you'd like.
Yes.
That's just odd to
kind of
me.
what,
I don't have any huge objection to it. I
Yeah.
just find it odd.
yes,
Yeah.
we have two of the three points are exactly that. Here are our opportunities. Oh, well, that's the way it is.
I think there's also peer pressure, right? I think the community is going to know if someone is violating it and could raise a point of order. I don't know what we would do with that, but I think if there were an important vote and somebody said, hey, there are like 10 people here who don't qualify for membership, I would think at that point, wouldn't there be something we could do? I mean, this is something for
Yeah, that's a
probably
good
policies
question.
and procedures, but people know the community.
So let me get a clarification. On the honor system, are we prohibited from questioning anybody's qualification?
No, not at all.
This is a question to Sarah.
No.
And you're on mute, Sarah.
Thank you, Tom. I think you can question it, but if it's on a poll and we're not tracking names, I don't know how you do that.
Well, I'm thinking in terms of a roll call.
Well, in terms of a roll call, probably with your policies and procedures, when you call on their name, whether you want them to identify, you want to identify how they qualify, right? Whether it's I'm a resident, I don't know if you want to go so far as to say, I own the house at 123, 4th Street, or, some have vacant property, so it's
Okay.
tax account numbers. Are they going to know that? I think maybe just by them verifying on record what their status is and their name. And if they're part of an LLC or something, and that's what owns the property, then they give you that.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we weren't prohibited from any questioning. So, and I think it's appropriate just for roll call. Others is
Mhm.
probably not worth the time.
And Tom, with that, in the heat of the moment, I would also ask who's going to be verifying as the rapid fire of status and vote starts coming out.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have incredible attendance for your meetings. So, I don't know if someone goes back and verifies later, or if just the accountability of having to publicly declare who you are and your status in the meeting is enough.
I think that that's going to have to suffice because we've
Mm-hmm.
acknowledged, I'd rather not put it in writing that we can't do that, but in a practical sense, we can't. So it's just a declaration. If somebody wants to bald-faced lie in a meeting, well, they're going to bald-faced lie. It does happen occasionally in public.
And hope
Yeah,
be
go
enough to
ahead, sir.
swing a vote one way or another. I mean, my hope would be that that would not happen.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, so does it, I think it's important to discuss this while everybody's here. Do you want to wait till we get to Article 3 and Article 5 to talk about these things, or do you want to go ahead and take a vote now to recommend what Sarah's saying, basically, or do we want to discuss further?
I move that we incorporate that into our current set of draft bylaws.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of incorporating Sarah's input into our draft bylaws, please say yes. Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. That will simplify things. Tom and I will come up with some verbiage for this, and actually, any of you who would like to help formulate that, feel free. And we may do it on the fly as we discuss these articles coming up today. So, Sarah, I just on behalf of the committee, I want to thank you because I know you have spent so
Yes.
much
Thank
time
you.
and effort to talk with council and work on getting something that I think we can all live with. And we'll be able to talk about this in the feedback session coming up.
Thank you. And thank you all. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well,
Yeah, we realize you put yourself on the line with this, and we're not on a limb for us. We do appreciate it.
Yeah,
We
thank
do.
you.
Happy to do it. Thank you.
Okay, so the next agenda item is the review and update of the project plan. And I think we kind of did the approval process part earlier, but does anyone have any additional comments or concerns about the plan going forward on the approval process?
No.
Okay, so as we get closer, Michael and I could go through more detail on how you approve changing out a whole set of bylaws, but I'm hopeful that the May meeting is going to be really fast. But it may not. We just don't
I
know.
don't know.
So we're prepared either way on what we do. The policies and procedures timeline. I know you guys, all of us are have been working just so hard on this. Hopefully, as we'll have different iterations as we go through with incorporating any input that we get in these various meetings and things into the bylaws draft, but hopefully the bulk of this work is largely done. Tom and I are going to be having to put it into format for the document itself and how to present it, which is actually part of the bylaws approval process we need to talk about too. But do you have any energy left to tackle policies and procedures this term, or do you want to wait until next term? I've thought about this. There's some low-hanging fruit that we could stick in policies and procedures. But my experience is that as we start getting into any of these different areas, it's just going to mushroom. And it could end up taking us down a whole new path of time. And so I'm
I'd like
happy
to
to
offer-
tackle some of it now, but I'm also happy to wait until the following term, starting say in July or August or whatever. So Michael and then Tom.
Yeah, I think your notion of low-hanging fruit is good. And what we might do is to simply transition those things that we've learned out of this bylaws process into an initial list of policies and procedures, and then take a break, take some breath, and then come back later and take a look at it. Because the reality of policies and procedures is that it's never solid, it's never baked in. They are always going to be potentially always going to be changed. So that's one way to do it. Just take the easy stuff first, get it out there. That will open up what we may need to be looking at a little bit later, such as definitive paragraphs, protocols, et cetera, and we can start thinking about that later. But I think we need to have a little break.
Okay, but I'm hearing two things. So you're thinking we need a break, but you think we could use the low-hanging fruit
I think
to
we can
present
do
at the June
yeah.
meeting?
Right, I think
Because it would have to
the,
be presented at the June meeting.
yeah, I think the low hanging fruit is something we can do quickly. And then after that, take a break and then come back at a more, at a broader level.
Okay,
So
Tom?
what I'd like to see is a list of the topics
Mhm.
for the policy and procedures.
Yeah.
And if we can make a brief paragraph describing what we intend as opposed to final language, that would be that's a stretch goal. I think
Yeah.
that would be good.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So we can do that kind of in parallel as the bylaws process
We should be
percolate.
we should be jotting down things that, oh, that goes in P and P, because I haven't been doing that and I really wish I had.
Yeah.
Mm.
I've got a few notes, but really, I think I'm going to have to go back and listen to all the videos because we keep saying, policy, this goes in P and P, and we've made some notes, but yeah, it's, and a lot of it has to be fleshed out. It's been like, okay, this detail's over there, but we haven't. So anyone, any other
Getting a
thoughts
list
here?
of things to do is the first
Is
step.
better. Yes, yes.
I guess I
Absolutely.
would just throw out that it seems to me that it makes an awful lot of sense to do it by creating a list at this point. I think we are, there's a risk of losing focus on getting the bylaws into a final format. And I don't want to lose the momentum at this point.
Mhm. Okay. Anyone else? So I'm kind of hearing a consensus that our next step, which might not start until May sometime, but would be to get a list drafted that we could start talking about in our meetings. Yeah, because the focus has to be on the bylaws. There's a slight chance
Yeah.
that we have to go back in the June meeting if something really goes down hard in our May meeting. But I'm very optimistic we're going to get this through in May, and then we would have another month before going into the June meeting. Okay, so I'm just gonna consider that a point going forward. If there are no objections, we'll plan on at least getting a list together. And maybe along the way, if there's something that we're find pretty easy to add in, we can add that in, which would be kind of your low-hanging fruit. Michael, does that sound okay, everybody?
Yep, yeah, all sounds good.
Okay, so in terms of the bylaws, what we take to the NCAC on the 13th, we're not doing this for Tuesday night, but I guess we're getting into the discussion of upcoming feedback session number 9, actually, which is what I skipped over. Tom and I have come up with a draft that you will see, or perhaps you've already looked at them in the file, I hope. And I want to apologize for taking so long to get these up there. It has been a crazy time. But we're doing a format with the proposed language on the left and the original language on the right. So there's not any redlining. There's not anything showing what the changes are. We've had kind of different formats going into the feedback sessions. And so I spent quite a bit of time going through and unredlining and to be consistent with the format Tom's been using. But in terms of how we need to propose it, I think we need to have be really, really clear on the document. And I talked to Sarah about this a little bit this morning too. Sarah's gone through something similar with, I believe it was STRs, right, Sarah, where things were being moved in whole fashion, and something that shows where they moved from and to, and blocks, and showing the redlining and showing a clean copy. I think there's some work that's going to be needed going forward. And I know everybody has some time limits. I'm actually looking pretty good time-wise, so I can tackle some of this, and Tom and I can talk about who does what. But Sarah, could you kind of talk about what you think the formats should be going forward on how this document is clearly defined to the members?
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so having done a lot of either ordinance creation or revision for the county, I think that the best approach is to have a clean document and a red line document. Because with the short-term rental ordinance, there was so much restructuring that also occurred, not as much of, there was a lot of language clarification, but we moved a lot of things around. I did do a comparison table. so people could track what was moved where or what was removed. Given the level of public and community engagement, all of the slides, the presentations, everything that is online, I think that a red line document and a clean version are sufficient, but I would leave that to all of you.
Okay. Okay, that sounds.
Red
that
red
sounds
line is
good.
gonna be pretty confusing. But it can be done. I'm not sure it's gonna be useful, but we can do it.
So Tom, do you feel like a comparison would be, well, let me say it this way. For the work that I do, I always have to have the track change document, which you're right, and sometimes it's ridiculous. You can't follow it, it's confusing. But do you have a different suggestion as to what you think would be more effective for the community to be able to follow the updates on paper?
Well, following the updates, how we got from where to where. We have the side by side, the before and after on every, we go top to bottom with what was there and what it's changed. And I have an example we could show if
Sure, go ahead, Tom.
Please.
uh, I need to be enabled.
I enabled earlier.
Well.
Oh, well, it didn't take for some reason. Sorry.
All right, try it. Okay, now I'm enabled.
I think I did it when I was in the other meeting waiting for people.
Oh, okay, you did it in the other meeting. Okay, that doesn't really count.
Guess
Okay.
not.
Okay, so here's an example of the original editorial version and the proposed version. It's side by side. And in this particular one, we divided, it was too much to put on one slide, so we put it on four slides, this particular portion of it. But people can read what was there and what we changed. Now, if you do a red line of this to make that, it's just about not going to make sense. I mean, it's physically possible to do. I just don't know how useful it'll be, and we can do it because it's pro forma, and I will produce that. But this, I think, is going to be more readily understandable.
Why do you say it wouldn't make sense, Tom?
Well, when this is not a particularly bad one. You've got a new paragraph here. This paragraph has been reworded. This paragraph has a lot of changes in it. This is one sentence before, now it's several sentences. So when you wind up doing a red line, you get sometimes the redlining, if it's done automatically, and I don't think I could do it manually. Sometimes it detects things and sometimes it doesn't. Word will show you something has been moved as long as it's not moved too far. So in instances where we've taken a section and moved it from one part of the document to another, we've taken the corresponding section and do the comparison. If you have a red line of the entire document, it's going to be a green highlight and then an arrow that goes up several pages and says, it's been moved here. Certainly can be done.
I'm not familiar with that last thing, the green arrow thing, but if let's just say this entire first paragraph is taken out and moved somewhere else.
Yeah.
My experience with redlining is that paragraph would all be marked out. And that would be confusing because it's not marked out, it's just moved. So in those instances, I would, and this is a lot of work for somebody, I'm not offering to do it, just to be clear.
Okay, so
after that, then I would put in green or whatever, this section was moved to Article 8 or whatever it was.
So you're right, this would be marked out and then as in green, it would be put somewhere else, showing that it was original. But then we also have some changes. So those would be read in the green. Uh, Or,
Yes,
yeah, so the order of precedence of changes, moving change or change move makes a difference. Um,
I think
It's just really difficult.
I,
But like I say, it can be done.
and it may be that I'm more used to looking at red lines than the average person.
yeah,
But to me, the way this is, isn't very useful for someone looking at it because they got to read the
Figure it
left
out.
and read the right and then try and figure out what the differences are. And that's not very helpful to me for just a person who hasn't been working on this for the last year.
Well,
Um,
I can produce it once we get, once we
So
go
Tom,
through
could you
this.
stop sharing and I'm going to share the other format?
I mean, maybe if we just put in some notes that explain, the main change here is ta-da, the change here was
Yeah.
simply clarification or something. Big
I'm,
change here was voting, and blah, blah, blah.
the only
I
thing
mean,
we could do is,
that's an awful lot of work, but if the idea is that we're trying to show this to people, I'm not sure that side-by-side thing is,
I disagree. I think that's about the only thing you can do that will make sense. And I agree, I will produce a red line and I think it won't make sense. And I'm perfectly happy to do that.
So
I
let me show you I think this is the way we were doing it in the other way. So this is Article 5, like we did at the feedback session. So this is the red line version, and then we have the changes on the right.
But
And so this is,
that's an evolved change. You're not
no,
showing
I
me,
didn't. This
you
is
didn't.
not an evolved change. This is what we did for the feedback session. So it's showing the actual going back from the original document that
Okay,
was approved in October to the new version.
okay.
So this is showing the other way of doing it. This is what I've gone through and undone for these presentations to be consistent. But this is another way we could do it for the document. So it actually, to me, this is a good way, but the other way you have to be able to show people, they have to infer themselves what the differences are.
They
you know
have to
we
actually read it. And if they can't read it, well, then they
Right,
can't read it.
yeah
right.
I'm sorry.
I'm convinced with Tom's argument. First of all, we've already been through all of this with the opportunity for people to tune in as guests or feedback, and to do a complicated presentation means that we have to go through the whole thing again in the same dimension and level that we've done before. I think if you put a side by side, realistically, I have to ask how many people are going to be interested in the microcosm of changes and where the changes came from and where they go and what the pattern was and so on and so forth. And I can't see that that's going to occur very much, if at all. But we can certainly answer questions when they arise. So I think, once we get there to the final presentation, we've done all of that already for them. We've done all of the detailing for them.
Well, I think the other thing that we can do too, Michael, sorry to cut you off, but we're getting long on time here, or short on time, is that we can have a list of the substantive changes. It's going to be a long list, but we can actually say Article 2, well, that article, but Article 3, section blah, blah, blah. It was this, it's now that. And so with even a link to that part of the bylaws draft. And that might be something that we look at when we present to the membership on the 13th, that we have something like that, and that's what we're using. And we don't worry about the little tiny things that we've tweaked. They can still have a chance to look at the bylaws in the file well ahead of time. But that's what we use to present, because 45 minutes is going to go really fast.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And it has to be as simple as it can be. I mean, the reality is that if there are any issues, it's going to be by one or two people who are looking at specific points to ask questions about. And they will do that anyway. And we are going to be fully prepared to answer those questions.
Okay. So what do you guys think?
I like your idea, Nancy, of flagging the 5, 6, 8 substantive changes.
25.
Well,
Yeah,
you have to get it down to a number that'll fit in 45 minutes.
that's true. That's true.
And leaving some time for questions. So
Yeah.
let's say that's 30 minutes. 6 changes is 5 minutes. Well, you have 10 changes. That's 3 minutes a change. That's probably easy to do.
Mhm.
And just say there were a lot of general changes made, stuff moved from here to there and so forth. Here are what we think are the most substantive things that
Mhm.
people would be interested in that actually
And you could look at
change
the full
your
document
rights, their
yourself if you have
responsibilities.
questions. Yeah. Okay. Do people agree with that approach for the 13th? And we can do some of that even maybe Tuesday night. I don't know how much time we'll have, but let me go to the
Well, in
agenda for the
in
feedback
terms of a
session.
presentation, doing the redlining manually is extremely painful.
Yeah.
I think we need to do the redlining in a Word document. That's the only feasible thing. I don't have time to do a manual redlining in this document. I don't have time.
Oh, no,
Well,
no,
I
no.
think
I
what
agree with
Nancy and
that.
I were suggesting is that we don't do that. We just
Okay.
do a few minutes for the substantive changes. We can put up with we put up your side by side version, and
Okay.
while each one of those is being discussed. But yeah.
Yes. So where am I?
I
I've
note
gotten
that, I note that
lost here.
Tom Prihodich has joined us.
Oh, thank you. Welcome, Tom Prohodich. Okay.
Welcome. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So I'm going to share the agenda for Tuesday night. I'm hoping this is going to be it. Yes. Can you all see the agenda? Okay.
Yes.
So we were thinking it's kind of two parts of what we're doing with Tuesday night. One is to get back to people about what we have done with their input from the feedback sessions. And so in some ways, a lot of that is the major changes that we've been making, but what we have incorporated, in most cases, we have incorporated what was in the sessions, and if not, we'll say, but so we'll have that. And then the second part is, we'll have the document through what we're looking at later today with the different proposals for people to be able to ask any questions and discuss any item in that document. So kind of two parts. I'm hoping the first part will be relatively short, and then people can take their time with any questions from the document itself. So how does that sound like for a format? Does that sound okay? Any objections? Okay. And guests, if you have any comments on what you'd like to see Tuesday night, please feel free to talk now too. I think we only have a couple. Okay. We
So
will go ahead and do this.
one of the things that Nancy and I had talked about is that we're going to be looking at individual presentations, that it might be easier for the process of going through all of them to combine it into one long presentation. That way we have less overhead. And I can, once we go through what we're going to go through today, assuming we have time, I can do that.
Okay, so instead of having these 10 different articles, we would have it all in one. So yeah, that should be relatively easy, or Tom, we could just start doing the document too. So it wouldn't be that hard either way. It could be kind of overwhelming though, maybe.
Well, the first thing I'll do is combine all the presentations into one, so to get them in the right order. Then I'll use that to extract to get it to a Word doc.
Okay. So does that sound okay to everybody? Going forward, we're ready for Tuesday night. Can everybody make Tuesday night?
Yep.
Okay.
So,
Thank you
so
all.
are you saying, Nancy, then there would be one giant presentation of 10 articles before any public people would chime in?
No, we'd
No,
have discussions.
Tuesday night's a feedback session, so people get to bring up whatever they want to ad hoc. So we will, first of all, go over what we've taken out of the last feedback sessions and any major changes to the bylaws. We'll present those with kind of one and the same. And then but it'll be just very succinct. And then the second part is they'll have the document in the meeting page, have an opportunity to, I'd like to be able to get it uploaded tomorrow after working on it more and get it uploaded so that they have a chance to take a look at it and have any questions. And it's more ad hoc. Feedback session's informal. People can just bring up anything that they would like to talk about. And then
So
we get
Tom,
into
were you talking about the presentation to the whole general meeting?
I think I would like to use them for both, yeah. To do a trial run on that, see if that's gonna work. 45 minutes is gonna be pretty tough in the general meeting.
Well,
I
the
don't
general
think-
meeting, I think it'd be good to have in the meeting folder, but I would really like to, in the general meeting, just present the major changes.
Okay,
And then if people, because we're not gonna have time to do the whole thing, but just let them know that there'll be notice in many times between now and the 13th that these bylaws are out there, but for people to review and that they may be changed. You know, each iteration is in any of these meetings, we may change what we're recommending on the 13th, but generally it's out there. But for the 13th, I think the only way we're going to get through in 45 minutes is to have the major changes
okay, good.
listed. So does that sound okay? So we're good to go for Tuesday night. And then luckily we have this meeting on next Friday where we can also talk about the 13th and the output of the feedback session. Okay, so it is now 20 till. We have Article 7 and Article 10 to talk about, hopefully pretty briefly, the output from the feedback sessions. Article 7's output was significant. So in terms of going from understanding task forces and being able to work independently. So Tom, do you want to share Article 7?
Yeah, that's what I had shared before, and I'll share it
Yeah,
again.
thank you. I think it was one of our best feedback sessions, that in Article 3, in terms of really helping some things come together on where communications task force comes from or can be, et cetera.
Okay, so the major change is that we now actually changed the name of the article because task forces got elevated in terms of its importance to us. And actually, I'll be interested in Sarah's comments on our statement about them. Basically, we're just going to, and this is an abbreviated version, as I showed before, just a before and after. Got the introduction. That's how deeply do we want to go into this? This is pretty much just an introductory thing.
Not real
However-
deeply, Tom, because we don't have that much time, just anything
Okay.
significant.
The significant thing is defining task forces and where they come from. And this is where we're sort of skating on thin ice, perhaps, don't know. That since task forces do not address policy issues, they are not subject to the open meetings law, because basically they're just going off and doing tasks which have nothing to do with the output of the CAC. It only has to do with the mechanics of running the CAC. Sarah,
So
can you
I-
comment on that?
Thank you, Tom. So this is, okay, the subcommittees are subject to open public meeting law. A task force is charged with implementing assigned actions. A task force does not address policy issues. Correct. So what we talked about, like for task force, might be the nominating committee or the nominating task force, right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
why I'd kind of like to go into the next page, Tom, so Sarah can see some examples of what we're talking about. Well, actually, it'd be the next, when we get to task forces.
Okay. So. Okay, where did you have in mind?
Like going into the communications and outreach task force. I think, I think it was up there. Yeah, there.
Okay. We decided outreach does both sort of the marketing aspect of letting people know that the NCAC exists, and also those people would probably be the best people to find new people to come in and participate. So that seemed to be a good combination. So we don't actually have a nominating committee anymore. It's more informal.
Oh, I think this maybe have been the meeting you weren't able to come to, Sarah. Or I can't remember actually.
I don't remember either.
But yeah, it was just, we really liked the idea of this outreach being able to take on the issue of finding people in many ways, both membership and trying to find new members as well as finding new leaders. So and committee members,
Yeah.
etc.
No, no, I participated by phone, I think the day we had this discussion. So I do
Yeah,
remember this.
that's right.
I think that for me to bring this forward for county council review, it just needs to be clearly delineated what is a task force and what is a committee, right? Because what I think we want to make sure is that as the executive board or whomever moving forward, if they want to create a task force or a committee, it is understood that the purpose of that group will determine what bucket they fall into, especially with respect to obligations for public meeting law.
Right. So do you feel like, so we also have a definition of task force in Article 10, but I think it's pretty identical, isn't it, Tom, to what we have in here
Yes.
that we just did? So do you feel like it needs to be more explicit than what we have there up on this, like page 2? The other task force example is another slide down, the communications task force.
Yeah,
Going
no,
to-
I think that, I think my personal opinion is I think that's adequate.
Okay.
Okay.
You know, the goal is just so, Nancy, I apologize if you've said this in this meeting today already. You know, once this document, once the bylaws are in their final draft form, I've already let county council know we will need to go through them probably within about 2 weeks of time to get them back to you right away before they go to the general membership. So this is something, if there's any concerns or questions, I will make sure that I get that back to you right away.
Okay. Okay, that would be great.
So I'm not sure that was explicitly said, Sarah, but we anticipate presenting this to the membership for approval to the county, understanding that it doesn't come into effect without the county's approval. So we thought that that would be the appropriate way. We want people to make sure that, yeah, this is
Yeah.
something we want to ask for.
Absolutely fine. Just whatever goes before the general membership for adoption and approval. I will work with county council to make sure we have the quickest turnaround time
Okay.
on that as possible. And I think this part is okay. This makes sense to me. If he has any questions, I'll let you know.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Good.
So it's basically in parallel. So we'll be presenting on the 13th and people have a chance to ask questions. We're not going to ask for any approvals from people on the 13th. We're just letting them know what's happening and getting any comments that people have that we can incorporate. And then it goes to county. We will follow up with our meeting. We will have a recommendation to county, knowing hopefully that we'll have had some input from people, even after the fact. They could email us or whatever. But the April 19th meeting is where we would take a vote to send to county. County would get it. They would hopefully get back to us before our May 3rd meeting. And then we can incorporate anything that we hear from county and take that into our May 11th adoption meeting. So it's kind of be going to back and forth, but hopefully by May 11th, we'll have something that, unless somebody has an amendment that gets voted on in favor of, that's a bad English, but that it gets approved in the May 11th meeting, the county might say no to. I think that would be really surprising with Sarah going to be there on May 11th and saying county's not going to approve it. I would be very surprised if an amendment passed under those circumstances. But worst case is we would have to go back in June for that particular item.
Or maybe something we forgot and something completely new.
Right.
and
Right.
Makes sense.
That could happen.
So that, rather than a change, that's just something new could have happened. Okay.
Okay.
So what slide did you want?
So could you go back up then? I'm sorry, I was taking you out of order. Tom Perhadich, you had a couple of questions or a question for Sarah? No?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to make my computer work. Yes, I do. First
Is
of
it
all,
on this subject, Tom, or because
no, I just want to be sure to ask Sarah a question about voting before she leaves,
okay.
if she leaves.
So I will ask you to defer then because we have subcommittee members who are leaving at 11.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. So Tom, well, let me just ask the subcommittee members, have you had a chance to look at this? Do you have any concerns about what came out of the feedback session for Article 7? I'd like to know how much more you want to go through this. Why don't you briefly just show all these slides, Tom?
Okay.
Because they are so new from what we presented
Yeah.
to the
So-
feedback.
Excuse me. Basically, you've seen this slide before. We've defined task forces, we've defined what a subcommittee is, and hopefully made it clear enough that a task force is not going to be something which is going to be addressing any policy issues at all. And there will be no recommendations that would be formed in a task force that would be forwarded.
And we don't say anything about a task force being short-term.
We do say it by implication. It's implementing assigned actions. Now that may be an ongoing, or it may be
Yeah.
an atomic thing. For
Yeah,
instance,
it's not
website
necessarily
maintenance.
short term,
Yeah, website maintenance, for instance.
like the outreach task force could be just ongoing.
Yeah. Or we could
Could
have
be
a
a
vote on it.
standing task force, right?
Yeah, we could have
There-
a vote on each line of HTML that goes into the website, but I don't think we want to do that. That was humor, by the way. Okay. And
So Wyatt has said he's comfortable with the whole thing. Anyway, how much do you guys want to have us go through this? I'm just curious in terms of time.
I just have one question, and it's about the task force not requiring membership confirmation. If a task force, say, is set up for outreach, is it an annual thing, or does the point was just made that it could be continual? So is it something that is renewed membership wise as a task force, or is it just ongoing and, does it end if it's not approved by the membership?
okay.
You know, that's a
That'll-
really good question. And I think the executive board approves the task force members. So I would think that they would have to do that each year.
So task forces may be constituted by executive board as meetings arise,
As needs arrive, yeah.
as needs arise. So they're very much ad hoc.
Because I'm just
Well,
thinking
but
like
when we
outreach
talk
for
about this
membership will,
standing-
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Bill.
No, you're going to say the same thing. I think.
Well, I was just thinking if it's a standing committee that continues, I mean, we'll always want to outreach for more membership. So that would not end, so to speak. So how
Yeah.
does someone then get on a task force for outreach if they come off it?
Sounds like a good thing for policy and procedures. We have to advertise that the outreach exists and will always welcome members. but that's the mechanics of it. These are open-ended. It may be specific, task to do, but the executive board basically does that.
Yeah, I do think that in that second paragraph, it could, but it's important things, Sarah, Susan, to add into the PNP. So
What's
let's
that?
make a note on our non-existent PNP chart, but we need to do that.
I mean,
So
it's the
I'm
only position that doesn't have a term, I think.
right.
Yeah.
How to adjust terms and recruitment. So the outreach task force can outreach for people to be on the on the task force. Yeah, no, I think we do need to flesh that out.
Yeah, and we call that out specifically in this paragraph.
Mhm.
Purpose,
Does that sound okay
composition,
to you,
operations.
Susan? And we'll explicitly put more detail
Yeah,
in the
because it
PNP.
just might, I think it might arise.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we can't know how this is going to actually work, and I don't want to put anything in stone. So we're gonna punt that one.
okay. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to discuss in this area? I think the rest of it, I don't think there are any really significant changes, were there, other than this task force kind of
Just
consideration?
the one we didn't talk about very much was making the communications task force, and that was just a matter of taking,
Mhm.
rewording the original and taking the list, which had a lot of duplications in it, and making it a more concise list.
Mhm.
So instead of all of those, there only happen to be 10 things, and they will be bullets in the fire one. But if somebody wants to talk about one or the other, then we can call it by number. But in the ultimate document, it'll be bullets.
Yeah, what I really like about this one is the communications coordinator position has gone from officer to subcommittees, back to officer, and now back to subcommittees and task forces where I think it belongs. It's a really nice way of handling all this. So,
It lines out what needs to be done,
mhm.
and I'm not sure it really has to be in the bylaws, but since it was, we don't want to take it out.
Yeah. Okay. You want to just quickly flip through the next slides?
That's it.
Okay.
That's it. That's the last one.
Okay, great. So they're all shorter now. Thank you, Tom. Can you stop
Yeah.
sharing?
I can. Did you want to talk to the next one?
Yeah.
Well, if you want to talk to the
number
next one, I've got it queued.
number 10, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm not hearing any objections to Article 7. If you see some, because I know you haven't had a lot of time to talk about it between now and tomorrow when we're going to be publishing, please let Tom and me know individually. And if it's really, really critical, we'll make that change. But we can also make the change Tuesday night and again next week.
Yeah, I think we should allow ourselves to comment more on the next
Mhm.
feedback than we
Yes.
have, because there's not been enough
Yes.
time for it to cook.
Yes,
So I think
agree.
maybe we should modify our rules a little bit, that we can
Yeah.
comment openly on stuff.
Yes. We've had fewer people coming also. I think it's easier to have subcommittee
We've
members
worn
be
them
able to
out.
comment. Mhm. Well,
Okay.
I think they haven't been as controversial, so.
Okay.
Okay, so quickly,
So we got 6 sections. Governing laws, no change. Organization, no change. The fact that we have a policies and procedures now, and this is
or we will.
no. And then definitions, and these are all taken from mostly from Article 3, but then 7 is also there. You've got business. I did put them in alphabetic order, by the way. Conflict of interest, which we thought was important to define. And actually, we have some people here who might want to comment on that. Sarah or Tom?
So we also have this in Article 5 under meetings, and a larger definition of conflict of interest. I incorporated this wording into that, but we also left some of the wording that exists in conflict of interest. So,
We'll resolve that to be consistent.
mhm.
So excuse me, it didn't change the sense of it though.
Should that
No.
include task force?
Task forces don't do anything which would cause a conflict because they don't they don't have anything to do with policy. Unless they took down the website or something, I suppose, but yeah, it wouldn't really apply. Okay. Going on, property owner, we talked about those in Article
Yeah, I
3,
think those
resident
are baked. Mhm.
and task force. Ooh. Didn't mean to do that. But,
And that's the
task
same
force,
that you had
that's the same.
in it, Article 7.
And funding, we changed that just to make it a little bit less folksy. We added
That was based on our previous feedback session. That wording was
Yeah.
approved. So, not feedback session, our previous meeting.
So Susan and I had a discussion and I looked it up again in terms of what we should call us in this area here. That's what I think is referred to in the map, which talks about zones, zoning. That's how it refers to us. That's an amalgamation of the titles of the various on the website. Is that, Sarah, is that a reasonable way to describe what that blue-green area is?
The blue-green area,
Which is
the area
the-
defined
yeah,
as, so what I would say is those properties within the unincorporated community boundary, because that's what the term is, as defined. The blue-green area, I would say, represents those properties within the Nescowan unincorporated community boundary.
the blue-green area is defined as those properties.
Or it represents or depicts. Yeah.
That represents
say
the
any
time.
one of those words. But yeah, it's the properties within the unincorporated community boundary. Not the unincorporated community growth boundary, which was a big conversation a couple of years ago. The
Yeah.
unincorporated community boundary.
The unincorporated.
Community boundary. That's right.
Could we say unincorporated Nescoan community boundary?
Sure.
And should those be capitalized, Sarah, or is it an official term?
It is an official term.
Unincorporated is,
Yes, in this instance.
and community also.
Yes, and boundary.
And I'm sorry, I have to leave, but thank you for the meeting and thank you, Sarah, for attending.
Thank you, Susan. And so if you need to, if you have any other comments as as you're in your spare time looking through these documents, please let us know.
I will do. Thank you.
Nice
Have a
to
good
see you,
flight.
Susan.
Thanks.
Oh, that was it. No.
Okay.
It looks like
Make
Bill
sure-
may have left us as well. I know he had to leave at 11.
So is that not too incorrect? In the
Yeah, in the and save that as
Yeah.
R4.
Looks good.
This is actually R2.
Oh, you didn't bring up R3.
You
Okay.
didn't have R3 up there. I didn't see it. I just
No,
downloaded it. I just downloaded it.
you did.
Yep.
Okay, I had emailed you the PowerPoint of R3.
If it wasn't on the website, or I didn't
Yeah.
do it. Okay.
It was.
I will make this change to that.
Okay, thank you.
What changed in that so that people know?
Nothing major, a little formatting, and then, gosh, I'm stunned I don't have that up there. And then let me see what I sent you. There was a word.
Maybe I missed it, that
Well, it was physically on page 12. Physically post information. I'd gone through the video of the last meeting, and that was a term that people wanted us to stick in. So
physically, no, I thought that was a term we decided not to do.
no, we didn't. I went through the video, so we can talk about it later. It's not a big deal.
Well, it is a big deal if somebody's got to take a stapler
Well,
around and,
it's Article 7, not Article 10.
okay. So,
Oh, I'm sorry. You're in Article 10. That
yes.
is correct. You're good with Article 10.
Okay, fair enough.
Sorry, I apologize. I'm too many
Okay.
articles. No, it's Article. You were
glad
using the
you're
right
one that
one
was
for Article
confused.
7.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
No, I was confused. Sorry.
Okay, fair enough. So
Very
this is good.
This is good.
Okay,
Yeah,
fair enough.
this is good.
Okay, we're done with that.
That was very helpful. So does anyone have any comments on Article 10? Okay. So, so those will be good to go to the membership. I'm not going to do a formal vote here. Thank you, Sarah, for sticking around. Can you go ahead and stop sharing Article 10? Okay, so the other articles have mainly been reformatted. I don't think we have any changes on them from our previous feedback session. It's more like we had already discussed the changes out of all the other feedback sessions. It's more that they've been reformatted to show what we discussed in our last bylaws committee meeting. So I don't think there's anything major, but let me go ahead and share. Them quickly. The PDF versions are on there, but I learned last time to not do any PDF versions ever again
Good,
while we're
good.
talking. So changes. Where are they? Okay, so I am going to. I don't think we need to bring up Articles 1 and 2. I'm going to bring up Article 3 here. We're going to share that. Okay, so this is something we may want to make some changes on today based on what Sarah just told us this morning. Tom, I'm not sure when you joined us, Tom Perhodich, but we had some updates from Sarah that were good this morning. So as you can see, this is a much smaller slide deck than it used to be.
By a lot.
By a lot. And but we do have some updates that we've already agreed to put in. So this is going to be changed to up to 4.
That's my question.
Yeah, you missed the discussion. And so I'm going to ask if we could discuss this with you offline, Sarah, Tom, but basically Sarah has worked with the county to, the county council has agreed to let us have limits as long as we have up to 4. And you and I can talk about it offline if that would be okay.
I would like to talk to Sarah about it.
Okay, all right. Then let's go ahead and do that now.
Yeah, first of all, I apologize. Let me get my video on for missing a bunch of meetings, but as some of you know, I've had COVID and now I'm trying to catch up on my own work. I have an appellate brief due in Dallas, not Oregon, Dallas, Texas, very soon. But it was reported to me by Bill that this decision about 4 had been made by by county council, and I'd like some clarification of that. I mean, to me, it seems somewhat arbitrary and random to decide on a particular number. As a group, we decided on a particular number in the feedback sessions on this. But as a matter of law, what is the basis for 4? I mean, if it's the county council that's giving an opinion.
Tom, I'm going to stop you for a moment, and Sarah can fill you in. She filled us in earlier about this, so she
Okay,
can
good,
answer
fair
your
enough.
question.
Sure. Hi, Tom. It's nice to see you. I don't have a camera at the workstation I am working at today in the office. So, but you can hear me just fine, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, as you are aware, I have been working with county council and apprising the commissioners of this process. And the expectation was clearly expressed about equity and inclusion. And the reason why the 4 was the number is because that was actually my suggestion to county council after doing a very high level look at ownership arrangements of properties in the community. And what I had shared with council was that there are several properties that are in a trust, or where you have 2 siblings that own the property with their partners in some capacity. And so trying to acknowledge and honor the community's request to address multiple ownerships, especially for fractional ownership or LLCs, what I was able to bring forward was a proposal for up to 4. And that was my reasoning for that. And they were reluctantly agreeable to that.
When you say reluctantly agreeable, were they reluctantly agreeable because it was a limit?
Yes, it's still a limit, but I'm trying to help find that place. And that's where I felt I could justify still bringing forward a limit. And I did also express that I meet regularly with each commissioner individually because I report to all 3. And so that was the other piece I brought forward. 2 feels too exclusive. You know, as I'd mentioned to Wyatt, this is not a matter of law or legal premise or where voting taxing districts are, etc. This goes back to the spirit and the purpose of the CAC to be part of our goal 1 citizen involvement, 4 focus on land use issues, trying to find some middle ground into that with the justification of the basis of looking at ownership relationships. That was the best I could do.
Well, as you well know, I greatly respect your opinion about any of this stuff. And so it matters to me that you've done your due diligence. And if it's also the case that the commissioners are reluctant or somewhat hesitant to do any kind of limit, and this is the limit that they would agree to, that makes a difference to me too. And I'm not sure, given what you said, that there's anything I or anyone else can do about it. But I want to think through what you said. But I appreciate you clarifying.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I know it's not perfect, but the other thing is Nescoin is stepping forward with the first proposal for a limit. A limit has never been considered anywhere, you know, and so And it hasn't been considered because it goes back to the citizen involvement and the equity and inclusion piece. I think where Nescoin also makes a unique case is that you do have more fractional ownership. You do have more condominiums. There are features within your community that aren't elsewhere. So I just, Tom, I'm not gonna get any better. They see me coming, and as soon as, I say, well, I'm working with the bylaws committee on voting, I'm probably gonna be told pretty soon that I
Well,
need to stop asking.
it makes a big difference to me that it's coming from, you.
Thank
It's
you.
coming from you based on your own investigation and due diligence of what the numbers look like in Nesquin, rather than it coming as a legal opinion.
Yeah,
Because as a legal opinion, without some legal basis, it does appear to me just to be random. But as you've explained, that not only what you've looked at, but the response that you're getting internally, that makes me feel better.
thank you. Yeah, I don't, just trying to think of a practical approach to it. And again, I did not pull every ownership record
Yeah.
for properties in your membership boundary. I want to be clear on saying that. But from what I know, the work I do and the research that I've done, and I think going through every short-term rental license by hand is a great example of that. That is what I'm seeing.
Well, I know when we first started talking about this and talked about limits, I remember Nancy saying that, limits could be 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and so that was always, that number was always within the parameters of what was being
Yeah.
considered. That is both 2 and 4, but
Yeah.
I appreciate the clarification. As you know, this issue is important to me.
Yes.
And to a lot of people, but I appreciate you responding to my query.
Absolutely.
I think
Anytime,
too
Tom.
that Sarah's really been in our court trying to make all of this work. And I think this meets the spirit of what we were hearing in the feedback sessions in terms of having equal representation, limiting the really extreme cases of that could happen with membership. So I appreciate that, Tom. Sarah's also going to be discussing this Tuesday night. So there'll be more opportunity to discuss Tuesday night. So I'm going to go back and share the screen again. And I think because this is such a critical thing, I'd like to present it like this, I think, don't you think, where we actually show the redlining here. We also need to say, probably under, should it be under membership or under voting about where the statement that the council is also requiring us to say, Tom, that you didn't hear earlier, was that we will not be, that we will be using the honor system.
It should be under voting, Nancy.
Yeah,
Okay.
voting. Yeah, that's what I said when I was on mute.
Okay. Okay. And I'm just going to do a save as R4,
Thank you. I was going to
whatever it
suggest
is.
that.
Yeah, I figured you were. Well, R2. We're only at R2. Okay.
Yeah, we've only, but if you really count it, we've had over 30 versions of this.
Yeah. Yes. This is a new style here. Okay. So anything else that we need to change here? I don't think so. I think all this stays. Okay. And then all this is just the normal stuff. So that's it for Article 3. Does that sound okay to everybody? Any objections? Anything else? Okay, I'm going to.
Hey, Nancy, this is Tom Perhodich again. The
Mhm.
other very important thing that I meant to mention is that on the slide of conflicts of interest, I noticed that the word judgment was misspelled.
Oh, thank
Really?
you.
Since
Thank you.
since that's what I'm wrangling with now and wrangling with all the time is judgments of a court. I now know that there are not two E's in judgment.
I didn't catch that one either, so thank you. So Tom, I'll let you
I'll fix
correct
it.
that one. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that and go into Article 4 and share that. Let me get it. 2, share 4. Okay, where did that go? Is that Article 4? Yes. Okay. I'm going to save it as, well, I'm not going to yet because we haven't actually made any changes. So this is Bill and me. We've already reviewed everything. I'm not expecting anything to be changed. I did update based on, if you recall, I didn't have PowerPoints up. I had PDFs when we discussed these things. So I did go through the video and put in any changes that we had in Article 4 and 5 and 6 yesterday. None of this was really affected. None of this was affected. So none of these are new in here. I mean, different than we've discussed multiple times. Secretary, treasurer. So again, the original editorial version on the right, the proposed wording on the left. So I ran across this again. We haven't really resolved this. Sarah, do you have any thoughts? Right now, apparently the NCAC, with a very small budget, but they've been using debit cards rather than checks or some other type of payment. And we've just kind of put off dealing with this. But when I talked to Chris Sokowski about, all the stuff under treasurer, he said, what do you mean 2 officers need to sign all checks? We don't use checks. So it's a change.
Yeah, it is a change. Let me flag that for county council. I don't know what to say to that right now. I know
If we
we
had
talked-
much of a budget, I would really be pushing back on that because there's no real accountability with debit cards. So, but it's such a limited budget.
Yeah. Let me get back to you on that one.
Okay.
Make myself a note here. And yeah, I need to follow up on that. Thank you for calling that out.
Okay, thanks. I think for now we just leave it in green. Okay, and then we created the immediate past chairperson based on feedback from Barbara in one of our bylaws meetings, and ran it by the executive board, and they liked it. So it's basically that. And parliamentary knew that we had proposed, so that goes in there. Nothing changed there. Nominations and elections, there are a couple of changes in here. The outreach task force. So elections should be held at the April NCAC meeting. We're going to be in a transition year, so obviously it's not going to be handled. It'll be handled in June this year. The bylaws will be approved in May. There's going to have to be an exception made, but I don't think we have to call that out particularly. The outreach task force shall communicate its slate to the membership at least 14 days before the April NCAC general meeting. Does that sound okay?
We had the discussion about slate.
That's kind of what I'm wondering here. Because it
Um,
was this when it was the nominating committee, but do we want to call it candidates instead?
Yeah, I think we should. It's not a party kind of a thing. It's not a party slate. It's individuals. Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
And the election shall be conducted by the NCAC chairperson unless they're a candidate, in which case the parliamentarian shall conduct the election. Now, I think what they were thinking before is that it might be the vice chair. Do we want to say the vice chair or the parliamentarian? some I where I thought we had that already, but
Yeah, parliamentarian probably should be capitalized. I'm not quite sure why we did that now. I don't remember. Because,
well, we didn't want the chair conducting their own election.
no, but the vice chair is not being elected at the same time.
Correct, right.
If
Shall we
if
change?
that were a vacancy, you could have the vice chair and the chair being elected at the same time. But that's standard parliamentary procedures that you set aside. If you're,
Well, the other thing is the vice chair might
Yeah.
not be at the meeting.
okay,
So-
fair enough. That's good. That works.
Okay. Any other comments on that? Nominations shall be accepted from the floor with the proviso that candidates provide their qualifications for office. So I don't think there's a lot of change there. We haven't, well, we've got 2 more on nominations and elections. So we simplified this. The Outreach Task Force chairperson shall again present the list of candidates at the election meeting. Separate voting by the members present shall be held for each office under consideration. If there's only one candidate for an office, a voice vote may be held. If more than one candidate, then a ballot or electronic poll vote shall be taken. Now, how is that
So-
sounding in terms of voting, people?
So that doesn't include committees. So we haven't talked about electing committees.
Correct. This is strictly for officers. This is the officers article.
Okay, so maybe it doesn't belong there. Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't think, well, we have another page. The winner should be the candidate who receives the majority of the votes. If no candidate receives this threshold, a runoff shall be conducted at the same meeting between the 2 candidates receiving the most votes. That's in the original bylaws. Over here. Newly elected officers shall assume office on July 1. The addition here is, however, they may begin planning for the next year immediately as an executive board elect, including budget planning and committee preparations. So that part we've already approved. It's just a difference, but there really isn't any real change here. So what we don't have anything in, well, the outreach task force is where there would be something about any vetting of candidates, which we're not really doing. I mean, I think this covers what was discussed at the executive board meeting the other night, right? For Tom and Michael.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone else
Yeah.
have any comments on this section? Okay. And then term of office, nothing changed here. Removal from office, nothing changed. That's been approved by county. And vacancies, we didn't have any change from what we've discussed in the past. That's really what I'm focused on here. Okay, so any other things for officers? Okay, good. I will stop showing that and go to Article 5. We will have some changes on that. Oh, and I did have changes on Article 4. Let me do a save as. I will upload all these to the folder. Okay, so Article 4 is gone. Article 5, I will share. And I know we're going to have changes on that, so I'm just going to go ahead and save it now. Okay. Not in Article 5. Nothing's changed here from what we've looked at before. Nothing changed from what we've looked at before. So this I changed. So we had talked with the executive board in the past about making sure that they can change general meeting dates. And as I was going through this yesterday, I saw we hadn't put anything in about that. So this is new. Want to get your concurrence that meeting dates may be, this is for general membership meetings, may be changed by the executive board with at least 14 days notice to the membership.
Yeah, we
Any
got to be able to do
objections?
that.
Yeah, they need to be able to do that. It may be coming up for June, for the June meeting when two of them can't make the meeting, which is an electric meeting this time. So, okay, so we'll go ahead and consider that approved. Someone in the chat. Can someone read what's in the chat for me? Because I can't see it.
Wyatt says he agrees.
Okay, thank you, Wyatt. Feel free to speak up. We're casual today. Okay, so the general membership meetings, just getting notices out, change because we're assuming either regular or hybrid. This is stuff we've all discussed in the past. We're being able to add items to the agenda. This is special membership meetings where we took the old wording and split it into special meetings that have a special purpose, like our May 11th bylaws meeting, but aren't urgent. They should have regular notice. And then urgent membership meetings. So I have the same editorial revision in both of these sections from what we had before. They're identical, but we've split them and then put a note saying that that was split between two sections. So the urgent meetings have the 24-hour minimum notice and having the link done. So incorporated the feedback we had gotten from our last bylaws session. And most of that feedback was the word urgent instead of emergency, some of the time sensitive wording that we had talked about, and all that. So all that language we had agreed on is incorporated in here. Does this look okay?
Yep.
Okay. And then executive board meetings, there's no change in here. Except I did add later, Jeff had wanted it more explicit that they can be canceled or changed. We have this already, but in here I added in executive board meeting dates may be changed, and we added in or canceled by the chairperson with 14 days notice to the membership. Any objection to that?
Well, that's saying you can't cancel it if you're 13 days out and nobody's going to show up.
Right. That's right.
That's kind of a nonsensical statement, but okay.
Well, no, wait a minute.
In other words, somebody, you have something that comes up a couple of days out of them, you're not going to get quorum. You shouldn't. I mean, you can cancel things. Well, I
Well,
guess it
so
just
meeting
fails for quorum.
notices, meeting notices shall be posted at least 7 days, but you will already know that you have canceled it, so you wouldn't be having a meeting notice other than it's been canceled. Are you're just saying they should all be at least 7 days or what?
No, I'm just saying the last paragraph on that slide.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of meaningless. It's sort
It's
of
meaningless.
yeah. Mm.
Okay. You think it's all covered in the first two paragraphs? Is that what you mean?
Well, yeah, in reality, it's covered. First of all, you're giving permission to cancel a meeting. That's not necessary. If people don't show up, the meeting's canceled anyway. If you don't have a quorum, the meeting's canceled. There's a lot of
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I think though, if they wanted to follow the rules, they would want to be able to, I mean, showing up is one way to do it, but another is to announce that they're not going to have it.
You got it in. Yeah, I don't.
We
think
have
that-
it up here.
Yeah,
It was
it doesn't
just,
add anything.
again, it was input from Jeff. But if
Yeah.
you guys all feel like this is better, then
Yeah,
covered. We
I
can
don't
just
see a
take it out.
need for it. It raises some questions that need to be pondered that don't necessarily need to be there.
Or they could be put in the P and P later.
Yes, there you go.
Let's make a note of that. P and P.
Ah, there it is, another one. Number 4.
Any objection to changing this,
No,
to deleting
No.
this paragraph?
No.
Anybody?
nope.
Okay, done.
I need
Okay,
to-
exactly.
I need to leave in a few minutes.
Okay.
How are we doing here?
Well, I'm hoping we're going fairly quickly.
No, really?
We're, yep, special executive board meetings. None of this has changed.
Mm-mm.
This is just similar language being added from what we had done last time. Nothing here. Quorums, nothing's changed here from what we've already decided on, except we had agreed on the last meeting that no quorum is required for information only meetings, so added that. And motions, yeah, that's nothing new. Conflict of interest. So this one is no change here on when we do it and who does it. So we're having for subcommittee, we had added subcommittee members for subcommittee meetings. Need to state their conflict. And then this incorporated the definition, any officer or committee member who votes or proposes a position is obligated to disclose. This is all what was in the original one. And then I added this part. So this is kind of what I did to add in your new definition from Article 10.
Looks good.
You lawyers, do you have any, anyone else, any comments?
Shouldn't it be in the first sentence, any officer or subcommittee member who votes on or proposes in what position?
Sure, thank you. Thank you.
Ooh,
Okay.
Nancy, question for you.
Mm-hmm.
This language is fine as far as it goes, or we could just basically put in there conflict of interest as defined in Article 10 and not include that, because in this particular case, they're not required to declare a personal interest based upon a relationship.
that's interesting.
Okay. So any officer or subcommittee who votes on or proposes a position on a proposition.
Is obligated to
Propos-
disclose any conflict of interest as defined in Article 10, period.
Of any conflict of interest.
We are not the state of Georgia.
And you feel like the definition in Article 10 is sufficient?
It's pretty all encompassing, and it includes relationships as opposed to strictly financial interests.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, does that sound okay? Now, as I was reading this out loud, I don't like or proposes a position on a proposition. I think we could just take this part out. Votes, oh, wait a minute, votes on something or proposes a position on an issue. I mean, we've got
Yeah, it's-
Yes, I think
Yes,
it's
the
good.
proposed proposition. I mean, that's what I'm having trouble with.
Yeah,
on an issue.
on an issue is fine, or an issue before the board, or an issue before the committee.
And
Okay.
if you just leave it there.
Okay. All right, everybody happy with this?
Yep.
Okay. And now voting. So this is where we need to make some changes. So NCAC action shall be by a majority vote of the members present, including officers. The exception is the bylaws amendments, which will require a 2/3 vote. Those attending via video conferencing shall register their vote via electronic polling or a roll call vote. Members attending a hybrid meeting in person may vote by a show of hands or a paper ballot. A member must be present to vote. Proxy voting is prohibited. Let me do the other 2 slides before we go in and edit, see where we should do it. The secretary shall make a permanent record of the outcome of any vote. Votes in executive board and subcommittee meetings shall be decided either by consensus or by the majority of the members of that body. We've added in consensus based on our discussion. All other voting rules apply. And third one is minority viewpoints and how we decide that. So I think it's probably in this area here
so
that we need to make these adjustments.
yeah, 19 also might have some adjustments, but we can do this first.
Okay. So
Slide 19, that is.
So NCAC action should be made by a majority vote of the members present. So we need to say, rather than
Right.
just having it like this, those attending via video conferencing shall register their vote via electronic polling. Can we say unless a roll call vote is requested?
Well,
Yes,
actually, I'm not sure that leaving that as one of the options
roll call.
is really enough.
Yeah.
Should be.
Well, a roll call vote is already part of Robert's rules.
Yeah, but we
Right,
want to make it
but Sarah
explicit.
was
But it's
saying
it's right there.
yeah. Is this sufficient, Sarah? For the requirement to, and we still have to add in something about we're operating on honor
Honor system.
system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that works, just as long as it's understood that the roll call has to be called. Or the call for a roll call vote has to be made at the meeting.
Okay,
Okay, so
That may be done by a motion or a call by any member of the assembly. It may also be called by the chair, subject to a denial by the assembly.
And to Michael, I think you made this point earlier in in our meeting here today. Should you also put something that, it's at the chair's discretion after the initial roll call vote to grant any further requests for a roll call?
Oh, that's a toughie.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
I like the idea, but there's a seed being planted that way.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and it's such a rarity.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just simply something that parliamentarians are inoculated with,
Mhm.
to be aware that that kind of nonsense is always possible, not only in this area, but in all areas. So
Sure.
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, thank you.
at the time of a vote. So
yeah, that's gonna need
A
some
ro-
work, but yeah, that's what
Yeah.
it means.
So Sarah, are you saying that it had it I kind of feel like it could be requested before a vote is ever taken, or it could be requested after a vote is taken if it looks like it's really close. Correct? I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's what Robert's rules would say.
Yeah, I think that it's just the clarification that it can't be done at a later time, right? It's got to
Okay.
be done at that meeting.
Okay.
But only requested then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, you can use the term concurrent.
Yeah, okay, that's not.
Be requested for a vote. At the
Immediately.
time.
Yeah.
During that agenda item.
Ah, that's even better. That's more restrictive. Do you think that's okay?
Because it's at the time that it could be before a vote or after a vote.
Yeah, 'cause-
No, agenda item may follow, may go on for 45 minutes. And it may occur with a number of issues having been voted on during that agenda item.
Ah,
You can't go back.
Okay.
I think immediately following the voice vote may be the term we want.
or immediately
Or
following
immediately before or after,
the initial
immediately.
vote. The initial
Initial
vote.
vote, the initial vote, yes. Immediately following the initial vote.
Well, you don't think someone could ask for a roll call vote before we ever vote?
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah, you can always do that. But
So
what
it could
you don't
be
So
want-
it's before,
yeah,
it's
before
either
or
before or after.
immediately following.
yes. The vote on that item.
Issue.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, we may do a little wordsmithing on this,
Yeah, let
but
me-
basically, this is getting the gist of it. Where do we put in the part about policing?
Wait a minute, hold it. You move the word only to just before. Only before or immediately following.
Yeah, that works.
It's not that it may.
Yep,
that
no,
it
it's good.
Only may.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
good. Um,
I'm a big
Yeah.
one on where the word only goes.
it's important. I
Yeah, it is.
appreciate all this. So, okay, so now the other issue is and we need to define roll call vote in the definitions. Can we add that to X? Because I don't think it is clear that it means what that means to people.
Yeah, apparently we need to put it up front, and unless we can put it in the definitions. You think that'd fly in the definitions, Sarah?
I am so sorry. I was just talking to a planner. Can you please?
Oh.
Okay, so we're talking about roll call voting,
Yes,
and we think we probably need to let people know what that means. It would be a little easier to read if it was in a definition rather
That's
than
true.
inline,
Yeah.
unless you think inline is important.
No,
No. I think I think in the definition section is fine.
Okay,
yeah.
So thank you. I think we could just take that right out of Robert's rules or
Yes, we
something.
can.
Can
Yeah.
you do that, Tom?
I can
Thank
and
you.
will.
Thank you.
Oh,
Okay,
that's different.
so now the only remaining issue, I think from what Sarah had said, was the need to say that clearly that we are using the honor system. And that's where I'm wondering, we had said that needed to be in the voting area, that we're not policing.
I think in that last paragraph, we can, it's kind of a polyglot. Voting, to start it out with, voting is on the honor system. A member must be present to vote. Begin the paragraph with, voting is on the
Okay.
honor.
Should I capitalize honor system?
No, I don't think so.
So we
Just
don't
a
need to
period.
we don't need to
Period.
explicitly say we're not gonna be policing. It's just voting is on the honor system. Is that gonna be clear? Do we need to define honor system somewhere?
Oh, I think that's fine. Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah, I think it's fine.
okay. Is this okay, Sarah, to you?
Yes, I think that looks great. Thank you.
Okay, okay. So I think we've met all of the things you've come back with
We
from
support you, Sarah.
council. So I think we're good. Thank you. Okay, there's nothing different here, nothing different here. Just made a note that we've moved surveys out because they're here. And that's it for Article 5. Does this look okay?
looks good.
Okay.
Excelente.
And so Article 6, stop sharing. Article 6. I think it's gonna be real fast. Let's see.
I hate when you say that.
I know. Okay. Well, we've already done 7 and 10, so, and 8 and 9 are pretty simple. So let me share.
But I do have to leave.
Okay, thank
Right.
you.
Thank you, and
Thank
I'll
you,
see
Michael.
soon. Okey-doke.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay.
Appreciate you being there a whole lot.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
likewise. I hope you have a wonderful holiday weekend.
Oh.
Thank you. Yes, Michael. Okay. And all of you. Okay, so this is a new section for executive board. I don't think we had much in here. Nothing new here. Okay, so this is where we have the related section, and we just took this out. So these are all in separate
It's all back, those are all
areas.
backup things.
They are all backup things. I just want to make sure it's consistent. Yeah, I think it's all consistent. Nothing we changed in here. So this we changed. I'll go back and update that to be the same as what we did for
So
article.
do we actually need that in that presentation? I mean, we're gonna be giving them one right after another.
That's
So we
true.
don't-
I could just take all these slides out. Is that
I
what you
would-
think we should do?
That makes it lots easier.
It does. Any objection to that if I just take out all section 4?
Nope.
No,
Gone.
You can highlight that, you can select the frame and delete it all at once.
Thanks. Yes, I should have done that.
That-
Okay.
That's
So that makes
better.
it very simple. Good. Okay. And I need to save that as. Okay. Stop share. So we've just nav 1 and 2, there is nothing changed from what we've approved before. 8 and 9, I don't think there's anything here that's. Yeah, it's 2 slides. I'm not even going to share it. It's parliamentary authority. No change. And 9 is amending the bylaws. There's 9. So I'm going to share that one just in case. Okay, so nothing's changed here. I think the line spacing needs to change as I'm looking at it, but that's okay, a little crowded. Okay, so after review and approval by Tillamook County Council, any changes shall be voted on at the next general meeting, provided that written notice of the changes have been emailed to all registered members at least 10 days prior to the meeting. Amendment of these bylaws shall require a 2/3 majority vote, and the amended bylaws should become effective immediately upon approval. Yeah, I don't think we need to say anything else because we're not going to be looking at a wholesale replacement of bylaws, hopefully very often.
It'll be somebody else on the committee if we do.
Yeah, that's right. Me too. Okay, anything here? No need to change this. Okay, I think we're done on all that. Okay, I think it's amazing. It's only 11:52. You guys have been wonderful hanging in here. So, so I think we don't really need to summarize the meeting and action items other than I'll put up these new drafts onto the website and also into the meeting folder for Tuesday night, unless we want to Tom, do you want to go ahead and put them all together into one document for Tuesday night before we?
I can
Put
do
'em up
that.
there?
I have another deadline that's basically tonight, so I won't be able to work on it the rest of today. But
I could do it
by
too.
Monday, I should be able to have a consolidated, take all of the ones that we've updated and crunch it into one presentation. I
Okay,
think that would be
so,
important to have.
and I see your handbook, Bill, just one moment. So I'm going to go ahead and upload the updated versions of these to the meeting website for Tuesday night, just so people can look at it, and then we can replace it with the big document when we have that done. Does that sound fair?
That's
Okay.
just in case I fail.
Okay. Well, regardless, I just think that way people can take a look as much as they can content wise. So that's great. So public comment, Bill, Bill Bush, thank you for hanging in there all this time.
So you questioned the use of the checks by the executive committee.
Mhm.
When I opened up the account, we had gone for years with just $26, and
Okay.
it
They started
took-
charging.
no,
Oh,
Columbia Bank closed and we lost our free account, so it took quite a while to search and find another bank and some finagling to give us a free account, and there was no way that we could afford checks. So
yeah, it just seemed like I can understand why they went to debit cards, just to be able to have some way to do it. There's stuff like Venmo and that kind of thing as well. I just, from an organizational standpoint, I don't know what you do when you have such a small amount. I'm wondering, Sarah, is there like an account through the county that NCAC could use?
Ouch.
Thank you, Nancy. I would say no, except for a reimbursement piece.
Okay. Okay. And that's what happens now, is that right? That if
That
like to
is
pay for
correct.
Zoom, they'll use a debit card to pay for, say, Zoom, and then they'll send you a receipt and you'll reimburse.
Yes.
That would go back into the debit card, I guess, is what's happening.
Yes. I guess, well, I'm not sure. I think I do
Yeah.
just need to go through that section with county council and possibly the county treasurer too. So
Okay.
I will work on that. That'll be my homework.
Okay, because I think right now the budget sounds like it's under $2,000 for the year. But it might be that there'll be something that they would like to have that's more of a bigger fundraiser where it becomes more of an issue. So I don't know. Have you seen that in the past, Bill, where there's been
we
some reason
had
to raise a lot of money?
we had one major expense, which was building the bridge on the Tsunami Trail. And we had about a dozen people donate. One person donated $4,000, and another person might have donated $5,000 or $6,000. And the major donor, accrued all the expenses, and the person who contributed $4,000 had given it to the CAC. So I ended up settling things with a cashier's check.
Okay. I mean, I think it'll work. But yeah, so thank you for clarifying that, Bill, and Sarah, you'll take it and come back to us, and maybe we just leave it. I think we need to clarify it one way or another, though. It should be in the bylaws. If it's saying two signatures on a check and it's been saying that, and we're not using a bank, we're gonna have to do something to change it. That kind of thing is usually in bylaws and not in policies and procedures. So, yeah. Wyatt?
Actually, as a result of an incident about 15 years ago, we were sort of discouraged by community development for having any money. So it wasn't a
Yeah,
concern.
and Bill, I was thinking the exact same scenario, and what that was there was a fundraising effort to hire consultants regarding an application the county was reviewing. And as an advisory body, that's not something that can be done.
Okay. I think that ended up being done outside the NCAC, as I recall, kind of privately after that.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay. Wyatt, were you starting to say something?
Yeah, isn't just including a phrase that says all expenditures of NCAC funds will be approved by the board.
Yeah, and that's already in there.
Yeah, so I think anything else is going to be, who knows what the form of payment will be in 5 years, and the tooth check thing is obviously obsolete, so we ought to take it out.
Okay, Sarah, do you think we could do that? Just take it out?
I think so. I agree with Wyatt. I think that might be the cleanest approach and then just have the authorization process.
Okay,
That
so I'm
makes-
gonna go back and take that out of the treasurer officer position, then just take it out, and then maybe we can look at it again next year when we're doing P and P. If we need to. I mean, it's not like we're dealing with so much money that we have to worry about theft or anything, and so. The danger of a debit card, of course, is you could just lose it. And there's no recourse, but it's
Okay,
not like a
so
lot. Uh-huh.
I have another topic, or going back to the topic, roll call vote. What I heard Sarah say is that someone may be able to demand a roll call vote. Robert's rule says that that is a motion for a roll call vote and requires a majority. So we would not be adhering to Robert's rules if we said that anybody can call for a roll call vote. Is that the intent, Sarah?
I think that it is, the intent should be what Robert's Rules of Orders requires through the motion. So thank you for that clarification.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And that may give us a damper on somebody abusing that particular privilege. People get tired of it and say, well, no, we're not going to do that. So the chair doesn't have to do that.
I would
Great.
agree with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent.
Excellent. I will write that into the definition.
Okay, and then I'll go back and look at what we put into Article 5 there on voting and just make sure that looks consistent. So thank you. Excellent. Any other public comment? Tom Prahodich or Bill Bush, do you have any other, or Sarah? You're not public, but any one of you, do you have any other thoughts on what we're doing? Are you feeling comfortable going into Tuesday night?
I'll just say continuing thanks to the hardest working committee, subcommittee in Tillamook County, and the hardest working public servant in Tillamook County. And that is my opinion. It is a legal opinion. No, I'm kidding about the legal opinion part. But thank you all. And if Tom can get this up sometime Monday, I will review the whole thing before the Tuesday meeting. But I'm confident that all the work you all have put into this and the feedback that you've gotten, it's in very, very good shape.
Great, thank you, and thank you, Bill, and thank you guys for coming and being part of this, all these meetings and feedback sessions. I mean, you guys have contributed a lot to this. And Sarah, I second what Tom said. You have just been so incredibly helpful through all of this process. We wouldn't have gotten nearly as far without your help and support. And I know it's taken a huge amount of your time. So thank you.
And risk on your part.
Yeah.
Well, these are risks we're taking, right? Thank you all. Yeah, this has been a wonderful process, and I agree with Tom. The process and the work that you guys have put into this is just incredible. And I told Nancy this morning, I said, I love talking about this committee work and what you guys are doing. And I have shared that story with all three commissioners, and Commissioner Olson has seen that himself firsthand, but I know we're all grateful for the work that you're doing. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And everybody have a happy holiday weekend. My husband and I are celebrating our 40th anniversary on Sunday. So I'm taking Sunday off, but we'll look forward to seeing you
Good for you.
on Tuesday night.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. I guess I should have already stopped recording, but I'm going to stop recording now and meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Nancy.
Take
Thank
care.
you, Tom.